Welcome back. Today we have an extra special treat for everybody. My guest today is a true ancestral healer. This person has had their own trauma, has recovered, is still recovering, and is now helping other people on that path. She is a medicine woman. She is a space holder. She knows the sacred practices, the rituals, and I think the most important one that she'll talk about today is community. She is the founder of Plant Allied Recovery. She is a friend. My guest today, Keelia Ryan.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, dude. Thank you. I feel like this is a long time coming.
Definitely.
You know, since, when I first met you and learned about what you were doing, I was taken aback and said, that's going to be a person who I'm going to podcast with and I'm going to have a deeper conversation with. And since then, our relationship has just deepened and, learned more about each other and what we're trying to bring to the world. And I really love what you're trying to bring to the world. So I'm just very grateful to have you here today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's definitely been a long time coming and it's an honor to be here.
Giddy up. So what, I want to ask what is Plant Allied Recovery?
So Plant Allied Recovery is a community, a framework. It's a mission also. It's a way of living, and it's for people who are in recovery from either addiction or trauma who are consciously working with plants and fungi medicines to heal the root causes of their addiction. So it's not specific to people in addiction recovery. We've really found that a lot of people with a trauma history have also really benefited from the practices. But yeah, it's a community and movement, non-hierarchical, non-dogmatic, that is an alternative to things like AA and what's available out there right now for community healing for people in recovery.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful, because most people who are in recovery and or even trying to get to recovery, even trying to get there, I think that this medicine could help them. These medicines could help them so much. I know that to be true. Like, in my heart of heart, I've seen it. It's happened with me. I've seen it with thousands of people. But it can be really scary. It can be really scary for people.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, I myself was terrified. It was the last place I wanted to look was, some sort of psychoactive substance. Like, I was so proud of the total and complete abstinence that I had and my recovery journey. And it was really the last place I wanted to look, but so deeply needed. And so much has shifted as a result of turning to the plants and really finding myself in the process. And I'm really grateful that I made that choice. But it can be really scary, especially when you're told that any substance will lead you back to your drug of choice or to a drink, which is often the rhetoric in AA, which is ironic because actually all of the founding members of AA, I don't know if you know this.
Yeah,
worked with plant medicines.
Yeah.
So, and Bill W. was
Mr. Bill.
Yeah, he always talked about, LSD and had these sort of like LSD ceremonies for people who recovery wasn't working through AA and had great success with them. And so it is deeply connected and a part of it, but oftentimes, not spoken about, and it's not safe to speak about it in most AA communities, like working with plants.
Tell you what, when I visited the halls of AA and NA, that was not, it was not even close, which is like, maybe 10, 12 years ago now, 10 years ago. 34, 10 years ago. And you couldn't, I wasn't thinking that way. The world wasn't necessarily thinking that way. And you couldn't talk about it at all. And when I started to go on my journey, and then so you said, I want to hear about your journey, but I want to tell you about mine first, that I had to abstain for a while from everything to learn that I could do that, and that, and to know what that felt like in my body, so I could have some type of baseline. That for me, that was really important. And I went through a process where I wasn't even sure if I was going to allow myself to smoke cannabis or engage with cannabis. I knew that it was helping a lot of people, and And I felt like, hey, I don't necessarily need help because I'm abstinent from the thing, but my life is, I feel like I need more sleep. I have, some stuff going on, some anxiety, and I don't want to use traditional pharmaceuticals because I'm running away from that path. And I tried them, and they didn't make me feel good, and they, gave me side effects and symptoms that I just didn't enjoy. And so then with cannabis, I learned that I could safely, engage with something else that, I'm not addicted to this. I don't think about it on Monday. I don't need to do it every single day. I can take breaks from it, but it was helpful. It helped me sleep at first. And, for cannabis can be helpful in the short term for sleep for certain. And it helped me with my anxiety. And that led me down a path that let me know I could be safe with medicine, and looking at it as medicine. And then just started studying kind of like how, psilocybin had been used for, we're talking forever in so many different cultures in so many different ways. And then I've learned a lot about the LSD, and I learned, I looked on the AA studies and all that with Bill W. And I said, okay, I think I feel safe to do this. And I think that it's going to be beneficial for me. And oh my Lord, the healing process that took place since then is I'm not the same guy who's standing in front of you today without that help and without that assistance and using those tools to my benefit. And I didn't have a community necessarily, and so maybe I could have gotten lost in it. And I that's why I love having have this conversation today, because, I don't think that I could have, but because I think intuitively we do know. But it's better. It's better if you have people that you can ask, and it's quicker. You can, this is a longer journey that eventually I found my people. I eventually found people and around here that I could share this with and talk about it with, and that has been even more transformative. So kind of finding that a little bit quicker might have been nice, and that's kind of what you're offering. So it's just for anyone to say that it can't be helpful or that it's going to lead you to another drug. Sure, if that's where if your trauma and your addiction is rooted in that, and that you're not healing what needs to be healed, but these tools can be amazing to help you get to that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many parallels in that too, in my story as well.
Please share.
Yeah, and so I came into AA with a deep mistrust of big pharma and pharmaceutical companies. I had been prescribed opiates as a teenager for my spine, and I have since had a few different surgeries. My entire spine is fused together. And so I was put on fentanyl patches as a teenager. And when I went to be prescribed these medications, I was telling the doctor that I was still experiencing a lot of pain and I didn't want to be put on any more pills. And he was like, well, we have this great new thing. It's not a pill, it's a fentanyl patch. And of course, that just was the perfect storm for me as a teenager, I was kind of an emo teenager to begin with. And so something that helped me disconnect from my feelings when I also had trauma that I was dealing with too. I was, trafficked right before this had happened and kidnapped. And it was a big thing that my whole high school knew about. And so that happened. And then I got prescribed these medications. And so it was really something that I feel really helped me at the time because I didn't know how to feel in my body. I had chronic pain, I had this trauma that was stored in there, and I didn't know how to be a being in my body. And so actually the pain medication helped me survive through that time until it wasn't a solution anymore.
It makes you feel comfortable in your body. So for somebody who doesn't understand why an opiate addict, does the opiates, especially at first, and why they become, can give them more confidence and more, because literally they are holding tension and they're stressed and they're not breathing the right way. And then they take this medicine, it can be a medicine, they take it and it literally makes you feel more comfortable in your skin.
Totally. Yeah. And so finding that comfort as a teenager, who are the most chronically uncomfortable in their own skin people, finding that comfort in opiates and in sort of more of a party lifestyle too. I was really big into, bass shows and EDM and things like that too, that had a lot of that sort of party culture. it felt like a great solution for me, and it worked for me through my teenage years until I had a big enough loss in my life as a young person. And I guess I'll just go into it. I don't need to like be vague about it. But my partner committed suicide the day before my 20th birthday, and I made this sort of conscious choice to start to touch a needle and to touch heroin for the first time and all of that right afterwards. And that launched me into homeless addiction, which is a whole nother, it's one thing when you've prescribed these medications and you're abusing them, but then that just took me to a whole other level of my addiction that I never thought that I'd go to. And every time I tried to get sober, I would feel all of the trauma come back up. I would feel all of the pain, the chronic pain that I was still dealing with. Like all of these things would come back up for me. And I couldn't get a lot of time together. And I finally did through AA. It took many tries. And there were a lot of things in AA that I didn't agree with that were hard for me to sort of swallow so that I could get there, that I still don't agree with today, but I, like needed to, like you said, adopt sort of this like, okay, it has to be all or nothing for me right now, just until I get through this. I have to sort of take on that lens.
It does work for some people too.
Yeah,
There's some people
absolutely.
who will go to AA for 50 years, and every day they're going and they're, identifying as an alcoholic, and that's, or an addict, whatever it is. And it helps them. It helps them to be in that and to have that structure. It wasn't for me.
Yeah, totally. And I think
Not that I
that's
won't go anymore and spend time with halls and AA, because there's still a benefit to dropping in now and again.
totally, yeah. And I think that that's like really, everyone has their own path in recovery, and we try to always fit, the recovering addict or like the person who is struggling into this one box of like, okay, here are the things that are going to help you. But really, everyone requires a different approach. And I think it's important to know. And, AA saved my life. And I'm not here to say that I like to bash AA either, because when I got sober this time through, I had just turned 23. I had no money. I had no funds for even a rehab. There wasn't even a bed at a detox available to me. I had to like put myself into a mental hospital in order to not
Mm-hmm.
use anymore. Um, and the only thing I had available to me was AA. It's all I could afford. It was all I had. And, it's free. And so I was able to go, and it saved my life. And really like being super involved in the community. I was really involved in young people of AA, which was like, they were putting on conferences and events for young people to have like sober dances and all of these really fun
Mm.
activities that really kept me going. I got really involved in service work, and I think there are so many things that are really good about the program, like the fact that it gets you to look for a spiritual solution and turn within and do your shadow work, and all of that. But for me, I just got to a place where I got super stagnant and I needed something else, and that's why I sought out plant medicine, even though it was like the last place, as I said, that I wanted to go. I tried everything else first, like EMDR, meditation retreats, like everything I could possibly think of. And I was in school for trauma healing too. I was in school for social work and like studying trauma and trying to figure out my own trauma patterns, and nothing was working. And so, yeah, that's why I turned to plants.
With the with the trauma, you mentioned two things that are like, massive trauma. I think about my situation and the trauma that I went through, and and everyone's trauma is significant to them, but it was, you were kidnapped and trafficked. That's wild. What happened there?
Yeah.
Okay, is it okay to talk about it?
Yeah, totally. I want to talk about it in a way that doesn't, makes it so that anyone can listen and not feel like re-triggered. So I'm just so that listeners know, I'll be really like conscious with the words that I choose so that it's not very triggering and not go into detail. But yeah, as a 15-year-old, a man started having, being very romantic and flirtatious to me. He was 26, and I felt like I trusted him. I felt like we were developing this relationship, but he was actually, sort of, oh, what's the word? He was like prepping me, trying to like shape me and mold me into
Grooming.
grooming. Thank you. I'm like, what's the word right now? Was grooming me into this. And so I ended up getting a restraining order against him that he didn't listen to. And the long story short is that he ended up following me on my walk home and bringing me across state lines to Massachusetts, and it ended up getting busted. But it was like a child prostitution ring, and it was really hard as a teenager to like explain to other kids in high school too, because they knew what had happened, even though my name was never on the news for it, but the incident was, and I had been missing from school. And yeah, it was a really hard thing. And I didn't remember any of it. Like, I actually, not until plant medicine did I know what had happened to me. It was in my ayahuasca journeys, actually, that I've been able to go back and see what was done and heal some of that. But I was totally blacked out and did not remember.
Blacked out because you were doing drugs, or blacked out because you like, consciously put it away?
Because of the memory. I was drugged when I was there, but also I think just like because of the memory, because there's some period beforehand that I don't remember at all either, before it
How
happened.
long were you gone for?
Total of 9 days.
My Lord, Keelia. I knew that there was like trauma, and I knew more about the the addiction stuff, and that I didn't realize that, you know, so that, that human being, just, not a good human being, not a, I think about those people sometimes, and I don't know what to do to make the world better, and to, have them not be here, or I don't know, I don't know. Like I said, that's my initial thought is like, let's put them all in this room with me right now, and we'll see what happens, and that's like violent and, not great. But I don't know. It's hard to have remorse, and to see you, and to know that you went through that, and like a human being. You said you were an 15-year-old emo, cool girl who just like, now, and everyone comes into their own, right? That's a thing. It's so funny because like everyone's beautiful, but like you present as beautiful, and you present as a beautiful young lady. And, it's just so hard because at 15, you don't know that, you don't know that that's going to be the case. I didn't know what my path was going to be. And you don't know, you can't choose what you like, how you feel, or what you look like, or what you want to, engage in with music and all that. So, just to it's horrible that you had to go through that. And I'm sorry, from the universe that you, and just, talk about the strength and resilience of you being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I deeply appreciate that. I will say, I feel like a lot of my work with plant medicine has helped me come into perspective on this, because there's like living with chronic pain. There are a lot of things where I had this mentality sort of before plant medicine of like, why me? Like, why did I have to go through like the world's toughest, like hurdles and challenges? And so many and so young. And I kind of had that mentality for a while. And I've seen visions of myself where my soul like chose all of these things as the learning ground, as like, okay, you're here on earth school to learn. And I feel like each of us, like the power, and especially someone who works and has spent a lot of time working in mental health and in that field, like the human resilience is so incredible. People are so resilient. And so when we can look at these things that we've gone through as the training ground for us to be the people that we are today, it's really powerful. And I think anyone is capable of doing that. And not right away, like when it first happens, if you're in it and you're listening to this and you're like, I don't feel that way at all, like it happens in the time that it's meant to happen. It's not an immediate thing, but I do think that all of these things helped to shape me to who I am. Every little piece of my life story has put me on the path that I'm on now, and I would not change any of it. Like I wouldn't, even if, I had the option to, I wouldn't now, I'm like grateful for it all now.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
For me, it's been years to get to that point. I was in and out of it for a while, where it's like, okay, I love the person I'm becoming, but what could I have been if I didn't go through this, if I didn't put myself through this, if I wasn't. And then now, and it's funny because I have a quote that I used to say, and that it's my quote, and it's if you want me, come and get me. And that's life, and that's the one that I love. It's literally, I see it as, now when I look back on my life, I'm like, dude, bring it. like bring it. Like you have so much resilience and strength because of what you've gone through. You know, and it's because you can compare it. You know, it's not good to compare or whatever, but it's like compared to other people. You know, I've shown my own resilience, and I've helped other people with their resilience, and like that's a giddy up.
Mm-hmm.
So you know that it's being able to being able to do that, and it's not immediate. You know, it's like but know that if you are on the path, it's there. It's there. It's at, you know, maybe it's at like, you know, somewhere along the rainbow or whatever. It's along the path for sure.
Totally. Yeah. And
No, you.
I just wanted to share too that I think that sometimes things don't make sense for years, and and it can be helpful not to try to figure it all out in that moment, and just to like be with, you know, what is healing and what is present for you. And it can take time for sure, but as I said, like a lot of things didn't even make sense to me until I started the path that I'm on now, and that's why it all shaped out the way that it did.
Mm. Now, because you were, I don't want to get caught up. So you had that experience, and then you had the homeless experience as well, and that's a whole different type of trauma. And you were already like, you know, that must have been really tough. You know, you're 15, and then you went back to school. You got better, but you were still on the opiates.
Yep. Yeah. So I went back to school. Well, I went to school right out of high school. I wanted to help people. That was the only thing I knew. So I went to school for social work then, started my degree. And my partner at the time was struggling with suicidal
Oh
ideation.
yeah.
And so, yeah, we were together for 3.5 years. And the week that we had met, he had apparently, I didn't know this until years later, but he had tried to take his life, and then met me, and then didn't end up like following through with it. And so it was just something that he struggled with for a really long time, that I just, as like a 17, 18, 19-year-old, didn't know how to hold for him. And I had a lot of guilt for sure when I did become homeless and did make that conscious choice after he passed away in our apartment. It was like I held this guilt. Like
Do you guys live together?
we lived together. Yeah, we had an apartment.
Man.
Yeah, and he was such a beautiful person. I feel like it's always the most beautiful people who who are just like plagued by this darkness that carries them around. And I understand, you know, I've since had my own struggles with suicidal ideation that I don't now, but that I did, and they were very strong, especially around that time, right after that happened. But yeah, so that happened, and it was just really hard for me to know, like I didn't want to live anymore, and so that's why I kind of consciously chose to start using in a much bigger way, switching to heroin and needles, and eventually like meth as well, and
Mm.
all the things.
Yeah,
So
you shared that with me when you were the first time, and it's like, hey man, I'm same, you know, giddy up, no
hmm
math, but you know, send it, you know. So it's like, you know, the other stuff for sure, you know, just
hmm
because I you know, I liked opiates, they were you know, better for me, you know, and so that was really hard. And you know, that gentleman, you know, he's here with us today, you know, he's loving it that you're doing the thing and you're carrying it forward, and you know, it's a giddy up. Um, so yeah, I can't imagine that now. And then so 20 and at you're 23 is when you know, you started to find the halls of AA and kind of started to get sober and latch onto it a little bit and heal.
yeah, I found AA at 21, and tried to get sober then, but just couldn't get any time together. I just would have all of my trauma symptoms come up and everything else. I'd go to these rehabs where they would say, you know, you don't need a therapist, you just need the steps, you know, and so that was really, I think I really did need therapy. And so it was really hard for me. And then, yeah, I mean, just like through coming back in and finding AA, but it wasn't just AA too. I did end up seeking out a trauma therapist and all of those other things. And I think the combination of everything is what helped me heal this time, and also just being really done. Like my partner who had died at 23. I had just turned 23, and I just had this message from spirit that like if I didn't stop, you know, that I wasn't going to survive. And so I knew I needed to, and there was just something energetically different this time than my previous times, and I just really chased it like harder than I had chased using or anything else. I just really went after my recovery super hard this time through.
That's amazing. Can I ask how old you are now?
30.
30. Okay, cool. I'm 34, and I'm just trying to piece the timeline together. So it's amazing that you have this ability to, because it is hard, and a lot of people do. They go in for a few days. My situation wasn't when I figured out I might have had a problem. I immediately put myself in a 28-day facility and tried to heal that way, and that was just not. Then I got out and I was abstinent for a while, and then didn't learn any tools or didn't know anything. Nothing changed. I didn't heal any root cause. And so, like, people would say it was going to come back, but I was like, I don't, we'll see. Like, I'm doing the stuff I need to do now. And it's taking pharmaceutical, Vivitrol, which is you're gonna not, it's a blocker, so it's not gonna allow you to get high. And so, and that talk about a drug that just makes you feel like shit. Vivitrol is horrible. It doesn't make you feel good. It's an intramuscular injection. It's not good, guys. But I mean, if you need it, if it's helpful for you and it helps you abstain, then it is good, and it did help me. So whatever, I guess. I guess. So yeah, and then it's and then I got caught up in it again, and it was it was worse, and then the next time I was just like, okay, I got to do this on my own and not try to be coddled by it at all, and kind of just really go. I have some tools already because I did the AA stuff, NA stuff, and then I just figured I kind of just was like, okay, I gotta figure this out. I really want this, and to be honest, this is another thing that maybe people don't talk about a lot, but I was close. I was close, and I was and I was abstinent. I was close, but I just didn't have the right head mindset necessarily quite yet. And my partner at the time, who I was re-engaging with, and not she's now my wife, and she she supported me. She loved me unconditionally, and that unconditional love is whether it, because a lot of time when you put yourself through addiction because of society, it makes you stop loving yourself. It disconnects you from that. It disconnects you, at least for me, and for a lot of people who I've seen and been with, and what, to her it just didn't matter. I was still the guy. I was still the guy, and so it gave me the juice to be able to be like, oh, we're really on this time. And then it was easy after that. It was easy for me to start to work towards it, and to figure it out, and to to start to work through the feelings, and and then start to heal my physical body as I did too, and understanding how much movement practices were really integral to me, and then dancing. I learned how to dance. I would go and try to dance, and I would throw up because I was so nervous at first, subconsciously. And I learned how to breathe and how to get, and it's just like really deep work. And then do this for 4 or 5 years, and then the cannabis and and the psilocybin came to teach me even more, to make me to juice it up, to go back on some of the stuff that I hadn't necessarily processed either, ways that I felt about myself, ways that I felt about the world. That's the thing I love the most about it, is that it helps me see a perception shift. I go from being like, hey, I'm the worst person in the world because this happened, and I did this, to being able to see it like, oh no, like I just did that because I thought this way, and I don't need to think that way, and definitely don't need to think that way about myself.
Totally.
So it's powerful that the the AA can, but I wasn't like in and out of AA. I was kind of like in it, and then I kind of was like, okay, I don't think I need that as much. So I did service, and I did that, and I did a lot of step work, with people, sponsor-ish, type of deal, but I wasn't fully immersed in it. It sounds like you were.
Oh yeah, I was fully immersed in AA, and I really loved, I really loved the parts that I resonated with. I loved so much, as I said. I think that taking a look within and, cleaning up your side of the street is so important. Making amends, being of service, connecting to spirit in whatever form that looks like for you. All of those things are really, really great and important keys to recovery, as well as community. And, you know, uh, Johann Hari has a great quote that I love, and he says, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. And so connection is really the thing that's missing. And sometimes that's just connection to self, like it's connection to spirit, connection to the earth, whatever it may be. But really that connection to community is really, really important for people. in early recovery, and that's what AA really gave me. And by being really involved, I was able to like be in the middle of that and have that be something that carried me through. And it did really well until I burnt out, and I didn't anymore, you know.
Mm. Did you go to use again, or did you just feel spiritually like I need more growth and I need to figure something, like kind of where I was at? I didn't.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly. Yeah, I was about a year and a half ish sober, fully sober, and I was in school full time for social work. I had an internship also. I was working full time at a rehab. I was doing service work, and I was just doing so much. And I think the fact that I was doing well and I was doing so much um, gave the space for like all of my PTSD symptoms to come back up, and I was just having a really hard time. I was having panic attacks, and I would, my therapist would be like, "Where is it coming from?" And I would be like, "I don't know. I don't know what the trigger was. I'm just like all of a sudden in a panic attack, and it feels like nothing caused it. I'm just here." And so it was just all of this like trauma stuck in my body that I had never dealt with. And so I was going to EMDR, which was actually making it worse. Are you familiar with EMDR?
I'm familiar with in the practice of what it is, but I don't know like how it could make something worse, or like,
I'm not an
or better.
expert.
Really,
Yeah,
I just know a little bit about it.
I'm not an expert on it, but I'll explain that it's something that utilizes bilateral stimulation of your brain to process short-term memories, or I'm sorry, to process memories from your hippocampus back, and so that they can be stored properly as long-term memories. And so sometimes what it can do is it can bring things up to the surface. And so it brought up like I had repressed memories of things that had happened when I was a kid that I had blocked out, and things come up for me, and I was just feeling more raw and closer to using than I had ever felt. And so in school, I actually had a professor that talked a lot about the emerging research on psychedelics. This was like early 2019. And so I ended up asking her if I could do an independent study with her on microdosing, and she was so happy to do that. And I used myself as a test subject,
Cool.
and started that path. But I had to really relearn everything. I had to not think of this as a drug. I had to think of it as a teacher and as something that I would consciously work with. I even grew my own just to sort of not like go to a dealer or buy them. I didn't want to like do that. I wanted to make sure that I was doing this in a totally different way and reprogramming my brain, just even in the way that I was approaching it, to protect myself as much as possible. Because I was afraid. There was a part of me that was like, I'm going to microdose and then I'm going to go relapse and like go, on a run again. And I didn't want that for myself.
Hmm.
But I just felt like every step of the way I was checking in with myself. Am I doing this for the right reasons? Am I doing this to escape how I feel? And that's really like the biggest test that I always ask like clients and people in my community is like, are you going to this medicine to escape how you feel or to expand? And for me, I was going to it genuinely to expand, to heal from trauma, to like figure out more who I was, and not to escape.
Yeah, for me, it's like I don't I guess sometimes I can use it to escape, I suppose, but I don't know if that's the right way to say it, because that's when I go to dance, I use it, and I don't think that's an escape. I think it's just maybe helping to deepen my awareness of my body and my brain, and that connection and how it can affect, and the energy exchange that comes with dancing, and it's kind of like a moving meditation for me. Um, but it's changing that relationship, and I love how you just said that you grew your own, because I like that's how I came up. This homie, this homie's awesome. He just is like the best. This guy's making soap. He has like the best soap, in the world. It's all organic and just the best. And he's just a hustler in terms of like getting people really good soap, and going to the markets and doing what he needs to do to get people this soap. And I met this guy, and that's what kind of helped to start. Like, I had somebody who was growing mushrooms, and he was willing to let me come down and watch him do that and help him along the process, and to engage with it in that way. I think that was helpful too.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely. I think that's really important to have right relationship. That's something I teach a lot is like making sure that we're in right relationship with these medicines that we're working with, which means that, we're really honoring the entire process. We're honoring the integration too. So we're not just like trying to chase the next experience after we work with a particular medicine. We're really honoring all of the steps that it takes to get the most out of each experience and to really have that conscious connection be nurtured with the medicines.
What does that look like?
What is that? It depends on what it is. If someone is going to a ceremony, it might look like, taking a break from the things that are distracting you from the essence of you before and after that ceremonial experience. So maybe like a few weeks before, up to a month before, to, delete any distracting apps on your phone and to take the time to really sit with self and to journal every single day and to be in communion and prayer with the medicine you might sit with. Maybe it's ayahuasca, like, praying to the spirit of ayahuasca each day, to prepare your body by eating really well and just nurturing yourself in the best possible way. And then, going into that experience. And first of all, when you do that, a lot of times, like, the medicine will come visit you in your dreams before you even sit. Like, the medicine will come to you and start working with you and start shifting things in your life before you even ever have that medicine. And that's such a common experience. So giving that spaciousness so the medicine can come do its work, is really important. And then, yeah, sitting in ceremony, in a conscious way and making sure you're in a safe container. That's really important too. I've sat in unsafe containers, many unsafe containers. And so it's really important, to make sure of that beforehand.
What does that mean?
An unsafe container?
I mean, I think I can understand. I want you to tell me though what that means. Like, what's an unsafe container?
There's different versions of it. There are some unsafe containers where people are unintentionally causing harm. So people that are not well trained, that aren't trauma aware. And even, there's so much nuance to this because even you go to the jungle, which is where I do a lot of my work, is like with indigenous people serving the medicine, and they're not trauma aware or informed, although they've experienced trauma. They don't know, things that we might need here in the West to feel comfortable, like even just asking permission before, touching and things like that. And so, yeah, it's very nuanced. I think that different containers for different people might feel unsafe to one and unsafe to another. But mostly what I mean when I say an unsafe container is not well-trained practitioners who are unintentionally causing harm, people who are trying to take credit for your healing. That's really, really common in the plant medicine space, people who are wanting to be seen as the healer, and not honoring the fact that it's the person sitting, it's your connection to the medicine that is causing the healing. It's, if you're a good space holder, you're just a channel and you're just really supposed to be an invisible presence. You're not supposed to take up the space of the journey. And there are a lot of people who are doing that kind of thing. And then also there's unsafe, like people who are intentionally causing harm, which I've also experienced as well. So it's a lot of different varieties. I would always encourage people to just check places like Reddit, places where you can anonymously post stories like Reddit, and make sure that there's nothing kind of going on with the retreat center you choose or the medicine carrier that you choose, and to really trust your intuition because, oftentimes our guts can tell us like, this feels wrong. And when we're new to medicine space, and this happened for me, I was like, but I can't question the medicine woman. I can't question the medicine man. I'm new to this. Maybe they know better than me. And it's important to have those thoughts, but really make sure that you're trusting your intuition and your gut because that holds all the wisdom.
I love all of that, but I do have a question because I'm curious about where just the first part, if it's people who are people who are intentionally doing harm or people who are saying that they are the ones that are responsible for the healing, like, let's get those people out of society. Let's get them out of the community. They're obviously not serving, what they should be serving. That I fully agree. The one that I have a question about is that, having a person who's doing unintentional harm, I struggle with this only because I feel like it's creating a situation where, and this is no offense to you, I think that you are where people who need to start with you and need to go to that, and want that support, that's where they should go. But at the same time, if somebody had a friend, a trusted friend, come up to them and say, "Hey," and they were seeking this, and they said, "Yeah, we can try this together." At least knowing and understanding like that. Hey, this I'm gonna try my best, and we're gonna do this together. I'm not gonna heal you. I'm not gonna be able to do this. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with people attempting to do it on their own and attempting to do it in community with others. It doesn't.
Oh
You don't
yeah,
have to be a specifically trained person to do it. I think it's helpful, and it's if you should start there 100% if you can. But if you can't find that path and you have somebody, that's
totally.
okay too.
Yeah, and I thank you for bringing that up because I really do think it's important for people to know that there is a huge difference between like shamanic ceremonial work and trip sitting and space holding in that way. And, and there are just some things to be aware of. I think that if you are really wanting to hold space for someone else in their experience, to really make sure that everything you're doing is for them and not for you. And so if you're talking about something, or if you're just to make sure that you're oriented towards that person, and that can take you really really far if you're tuned in to that person and you're just a safe person wanting to help another person. That's a different story and something different. When you pay lots of money to go to a retreat space and there's unintentional harm that happens from space holders that are working there. That's kind of different when you're expecting to be in a space where you're receiving this healing and you've spent a lot of money, and those types of things happen a lot. And so just bringing awareness to them too, and not to shame anyone, because I'm sure that in my process I've worked at many ayahuasca churches, like multiple ayahuasca churches and retreat spaces, and lots of spaces and different types of spaces too. And I'm sure at some point, especially early on, I've caused harm in some way. And I think it's all a part of the process. I think the key is to always reflect. If you're a space holder, always like make sure that you're continuously growing, and to have really good teachers too, I think can be really helpful. It has been for me. So yeah, just to differentiate between those things.
I think that was spot on. I think that's what the differentiation is it's in me not understanding the difference between like space holding and true ceremonial work. Because to be honest, I haven't done what you would consider ceremony. I haven't done. I've done Steve's ceremony, where I've done a lot of healing on my own, and we're taking the next steps, soon to see if that is something that can be more expensive for me and can help me. Sitting with somebody who is very well trained, and maybe I'll come sit with you sometime too. Cool, yeah. And so because I think there is another step to that, and yes, like have people that you trust, like outwardly, inwardly trust and know, and vet them too. Vet them, go on Reddit, go on, use the internet. You just figure out, make sure that you're safe and that you're 100%. I think because. Yeah, in a place where you're actually giving, the energy exchange is me giving you money and you giving me, service. The service needs to be up to par, and I'm super glad there's people like you who are bringing awareness to that, because it probably I mean, how many centers have you worked at? Like how murky is it? How murky are the waters? Because I would say, like you said, there's probably a lot of like that, that shitbag 26-year-old from the earlier in the story, he, there's probably a lot of people like that who are realizing that this is another tool to, alter people's minds and control their
Yeah.
consciousness.
Yeah, I will say, like, this could be a whole other podcast topic, so I don't know, we won't get that deep on it, but I will say, I think that the plant medicine spaces and the spiritual community in general can be the perfect breeding ground for people with narcissistic personality types, because they can utilize the sort of spiritual lingo and be like, oh, if you're triggered by me, it's a reflection of you, and not own their own stuff. And so I always joke that like so many people in the spiritual community are all about ascension, and I'm really about descension, like bringing the sacred down back into our bodies, into the earth. Like, there's just this very like alluring sort of like thing that happens in plant medicine communities that I've witnessed unfold in multiple spaces, where people start to have their spiritual ego inflated. And so I love Terrence McKenna says that psychedelics are non-specific amplifiers. And so, when we go to this medicine with intention of healing, it's going to amplify that healing. But when people are going to this medicine with the intention of being seen as a medicine person or being seen as a healer, and they have all these things, it's just going to amplify their ego around it rather than what it's supposed to do. And I've witnessed that. I've witnessed like narcissism and things happen as a result of working with medicine too. So it's really it's interesting. The same thing happens in AA too. I mean, there are people who get inflated on this path, and I'm not here to bring shame to any of those to anyone who's experiencing that. It's just a gentle reminder to really remember that this requires deep personal reflection. It requires us to be doing the work. And so, what I always look for in other people are people who are really walking the walk and not just talking the talk, because oftentimes the people talking the talk the loudest, in my experience, have not been people who actually practice that. And so to really find the people who are practicing it, who are, walking the walk well, and showing that examples of that in other aspects of their life, like how do they treat their family and how do they treat their employees, and that's where you can get those clues.
That's a great point. People will reveal themselves if you listen and watch and pay attention. So you did this microdosing, guide, situation with the teacher and the first teacher at the university,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was successful. But you took what changed that like led you? Was it was it the medicine? Was it that led you to being the person that you are today, which, from there and now was, like you said, you've worked at tons of different retreat centers and been, I'm guessing, all over the place or, to do that. So just tell me about that journey a little bit.
Yeah.
Let me introduce you to Elevate, a premium functional mushroom company focused on supporting your highest potential. They offer a range of powerful supplements crafted from the finest medicinal fungi designed to naturally enhance your well-being. Elevate carries everything from mushroom tinctures, capsules, and teas to their delicious mushroom-infused coffees. All of their products are made with USA-grown mushrooms and contain only wild medicinal mushrooms, no psychoactive compounds. I personally use their Focus Tincture every day and love their chai tea blend. It's my go-to for a calming yet energizing boost. Elevate's products support mental clarity, immunity, and overall vitality. They ship nationwide, so whether you're new to functional mushrooms or already a fan, Elevate has something for you. Check them out at shopelevatemushrooms.com, where you will find a detailed description of each product and experience the difference for yourself.
When I was microdosing, I started to notice immediate shifts. Some of the biggest ones that I noticed was just feeling more like myself. That was the only way I could describe it. It's just like I felt more like I was myself somehow. I felt my PTSD symptoms diminish a lot. I still had some struggles with anxiety and nightmares and things that were coming up for me. And so I knew I needed deeper healing there. But the biggest thing that happened is I went to some of my friends in AA and I shared, hey, I've been microdosing, and no, it's not a relapse. It's subperceptual. I haven't been altered in any way, but I'm on this journey. And the friends that I told all said, that's not okay. Like, you need to go pick up a white chip and start your journey over. And eventually it spread and got to the committees that I was a part of, and I was asked to step down from them. And so I lost my whole AA community. And so I was really like, okay, well, what do I do now? Like, I'm someone who was receiving so much from the just from just having community, from being of service. And so I needed to find a way to sort of fill that void. And I reached out to a couple of friends who I knew had been sitting in ceremonies, and I asked them about the ceremonies that they sat in. And this really, like, during this time, I'm really grateful. It took a little while for me to save up and be able to sit in my first ayahuasca ceremony. But during this time, while I was microdosing and didn't have a lot of community, I really was doing like a deep study of self. I started to slowly experiment with taking a little bit more medicine and started to really enter that space of being able to heal. Like, some of the nightmares went away, and I was learning a lot and really grateful for that time. And yeah, I sat at my first ayahuasca ceremony in early 2020. So like COVID times were big, but it was, you know, I think exactly what I needed. And yeah, I sat in my first ceremony, and the very first night I didn't feel anything. You know, and what did happen though is that a woman who I'm really close friends with, we actually went to the jungle a couple of weeks ago together. But the woman next to me, it was her very first ceremony and my very first ceremony, and she started freaking out and was like, "Where am I? Who are you people? Why am I here?" And so I got pulled out of my journey and was immediately like, "Is she okay?" And really wanted to like hold space for her. My very like just feeling concerned for this sister next to me that I didn't know, but like was like, "Is she gonna be okay?" And I ended up talking to the person. So I ended up, to go back, I ended up sitting, it was 3 ceremonies in that weekend, and I did have an experience by the end of that. I was exhausted, and I talked to the owner of the church, the lead pastor, I think was his title, and he said, you know, I talked to him about the woman next to me and asked what they do for women, if there's like a woman present at all times and all these things, and he was like, "No, we hadn't considered that. That's a really good idea. Would you like to be a facilitator?" And I had only sat once, and I was like, "Are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah, why don't you come facilitate?" You know, and I was trauma informed. I also, you know, had been working in mental health, and so I was like, okay, there's some correlation there. And so I ended up working at that space very briefly. There was a lot of drama and things going on behind the scenes. So I quickly ended up working for another woman who I studied with for a year and a half, who was like training me as her right hand woman. I studied integration in that time period too, so that was really my niche within the medicine spaces, was to offer integration. And I just found a lot of instability in the plant medicine communities. Like all of these spaces had really unstable leaders. And fell apart shortly after. And so I've seen that pattern repeat, and it's even made me question whether or not I should be on a medicine path at all. But I feel like for me personally, I think that it's just a lack of groundedness in this community. It's a lack of, you know, the ability to even have these tough conversations and like talk about what's coming up for people. And I'm really wanted to be the change I want to see in the medicine world, and help create community that is stable and that's connected on something outside of just taking medicine all the time together. It's something that's connected around unity and community and mutual support and reciprocity and all of these things that I've learned from the amazing teachers that I have now. So
Were all the first places that you started in, were they all in the U.S.?
yeah, they were all in New England.
They were all in New England.
Yep.
Yeah. Did you find that it's like it was an American thing that you were struggling with? And that's because I know now you're, you know, just from talking to you, I know that you've had a lot of experiences of going to Peru and doing your thing there. And so is it an American thing? Why? What's
You know, I think that it's it's
Have
so
you found the same
complicated.
thing in retreat centers in Peru?
I have. I think that there are, yeah, there are just bad actors everywhere, and there are also really great people doing amazing work. You know, it's so challenging, and I'm grateful to be spreading awareness, but also don't want to scare people away from this work too, because it is so life changing, and I, you know, have totally transformed my life, and also am not the same woman that I was when I started this journey in the best possible way. Um, and but yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of things, right? When capitalism meets
Mm.
this type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
these sacred ancestral practices, um, you know, then it creates just like a lot of chaos, and it's really challenging, right? Because I don't think that these ceremonies should be free. I think that actually the energetic exchange, and I've done this at a lot of my retreats. I've had people who I've always let in. I still do this. I always let in a scholarship person, and I found oftentimes that the people who do come on scholarship, there is a little bit less of an energy of a stake in the game. You know, they don't take the dieta as seriously, the preparation for the ceremony, you know. And so it's so nuanced, right? And I'm not here to know, I don't know the answers. But I will say that, yeah, it is prevalent that there's this sort of like spiritual narcissism and ego that can crop up oftentimes in medicine spaces all around the world. And I think that it really, I think that a lot of it has to do with a lack of elders. Like, I found any community where there are elders. That's why going into indigenous communities and seeing like this isn't a thing there. Anywhere where there's elders, I would say people are doing a good job, but we here don't have elders. We have even lost our ability to respect our elders, right? We just like lock them away and put them in a home somewhere, and you know, it's not an integrated process, and we're not turning to them for counsel. And so I think that that's a lot of it, is that we don't have the same things in place that other places do, and it can lead to us sort of like, you know, creating a new issue of colonization with the medicine, where we are like taking these practices and taking this medicine and not offering any reciprocity. So that's something that I teach and I try to practice, is reciprocity. So when I do have retreats, I try to have like my teachers come from South America, and or like making sure that, you know, I'm trying to donate money to Saving the Jungle from some of my online containers, like trying to have that sacred reciprocity. It doesn't have to look like that. I mean, even for someone who's maybe microdosing, reciprocity as a practice for you could look like, on the days that you microdose, you pick up trash. Like, you know, it can be
Hmm.
something simple, but I think bringing that back into it can really help. It sounds silly, like, because it's such a little thing, but like, those actionable steps are the things that can help build a foundation so that the overall medicine communities are built on actual real practice, not just talking about love and light and ascending, you know, like actual practices that are supportive and helpful and, um, you know, yeah, reciprocal.
Eh, Yeah, it's really good to hear you say this, and I'm glad that I like got to sit with you and do this podcast because, yeah, there, like I said, there's like a lot of narcissistic people out there, and people who are just building it the wrong way, and you're building it the right way, and you seem so grounded in the, you know, in the mission, and so like like how many people are in your community? How many people are a part of this?
So I mean, I guess there's multiple communities, right? So, which I guess I can explain and talk about now,
Please.
maybe. Okay. Yeah. So, for about 2 years now, I've been offering weekly peer support meetings, and there's about 2,000 people on that email list. But not everyone, obviously, not all 2,000 people show up to the Zoom call. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's just really a space for us to learn together, to grow together, to share our experiences working with medicine. I also have an online community that is its own separate social networking app that is also free, and it has a course that talks about harm reduction, how to vet your medicine carriers, you know, how to walk well as a person in recovery on this path, and that's all free. So course, you can find the peer support meetings within it, and then also just like a way to connect. So you can DM each other, there's a community chat, there's a discussion board that's always popping with really interesting, you know, stuff about psychedelics and plants and all the things, healing. And so, yeah, that's called the Plant Allied Recovery Community. So we have that. That right now is pretty new. I just launched it about a month ago, so still growing. And then, yeah, I mean, we have a little bit more of an in-person community too, people who regularly come to our retreats, but not everyone identifies as being in recovery who comes to our retreats and stuff. So that's also separate community too. But I'm trying. I mean, I think community building is something, it's so interesting because all through AA, it was something that fascinated me and that I wanted to learn how to do well. And I do think AA is a great model, but it's not perfect either. And I'm just, you know, basing my community building on what I wish I would have had when I started this journey, which would have been like, I didn't need a guru, I needed a friend. And so I'm not here to be anyone's guru. I'm here to be just another person on the path who can be a supportive hand or an ear. Um, I'm just trying to create like yeah, what I wish I would have had when I was on this journey before, and what I think from all of my experience working in recovery, because I also was in that work for a while, working at rehabs and things like that. Um, just like a combination of it all, what I wish I would have had.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. Is it like for demographic based, is it mostly women?
No, no, it's about half and half, I would say. Maybe a little bit more, like, I think last I checked, it's like 60% men.
Oh,
But
wow.
I think, yeah, it's pretty even,
Pretty balanced.
pretty balanced. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so like you'll do like what is a when you say like a ceremony, like your ceremony, what is that? Well, your retreats. What does that mean? Like what do your retreats look like? When do you do them? How often do you do them?
Yeah. So, you know, I try to do a few retreats in the summer, and then I do my own travels. And as you know, I spent the winter in South America, um, in the winter, and so I usually have three-ish per summer. This year, I think that's the goal, is to have three this summer, and probably one more in the fall. Um, but those are just something. I mean, I love the online community I've built. It's amazing, but for me, for myself as a community builder and entrepreneur, I need to like see people and hug them. And so, yeah, it's really, there's a beautiful connection now with my teachers from Colombia who are coming to the States once or twice a year now, where they're coming to Maine as well. And so, yeah, I'm scheduling those, and in the process of still figuring out my summer calendar around that. But
What is like what type of medicine are you doing at these retreats?
depends on the retreat. When my teachers come, it's yahe, sometimes bufo as well as another medicine that he carries. Yahe, for those that don't know, is like the Colombian brew of ayahuasca.
Okay.
Um, and so for him, it'll be that. For other retreats, often it's the fungi medicines of some sort. But I've also done retreats without plant medicine too, which I think are equally as healing and important for places for the medicine of dancing and the medicine of breath work and the medicine of all of that, like the integration. And really, like, a huge part of what I want people to know about plant medicine work is that it's actually not about the ceremonies, it's about life. Like, that's what we're doing this work for, is to heal. And so bringing that sort of idea of life being the ceremony into our daily life is a part of what I try to teach and retreat, but just get the opportunity for us to drop in. So I think this summer the plan so far is one mushroom, one yahe, and one no medicine retreat, but I'm still in the planning process of the summer retreat schedule.
That's cool. And like what is it? Like 50 people or how many people are
No, 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 much more small. Like usually 10 people. You're good.
so so 10 people is ideal?
10. I like when my teacher comes, I can have a few more. I personally really like intimate small containers. I think that my very first ceremony was 40 people, and I didn't feel like I got to really bond with everyone there, and we all sat and did ayahuasca together. So it seems like we should be like lifelong bonded. Many people, it was their very first time, and there were 40 people, and it was too much. I think that for me, like between 10 and 15 is the ideal number of people for retreats. So I like small, intimate containers.
In that, is it like multiple, because I know when you go to these retreats that are in Peru or in Colombia, you're there for 7 days and you're doing, three different types of medicine and you're doing it a couple times. How do your retreats work?
Yeah, it also depends. It depends on who's carrying. I turn to who is, carrying the medicine. I personally, carry mushrooms, but I don't carry, even though I've, you know, studied ayahuasca deeply and been on that path for 5 years, I'm still at least 10 plus years away from being qualified enough to do any type of serving of that medicine. I really also feel like my place in all of this is more in the integration realms. I love space holding, but I think that yeah, being that bridge for people between ceremony and bringing that into their life, bringing the messages and allowing that to allow for the most influential change in their life, is where like my magic and medicine is. So yeah, I turned to my teachers for how they want to set it up or how they want to do medicine.
Cannabis products are becoming more popular every day. Whether you're looking for the best night's sleep, trying to mitigate daily stress, or just trying to enjoy some laughter with friends, OG Cannabis is the store for you. OG Cannabis has an unbiased approach that is unique and simple. Unlike the competition, they don't sell their own manufactured products, but instead proudly showcase the best vendors across Maine. A dispensary like no other. Come and visit today at 18 American Way, Elliott, Maine. OG Cannabis. Oh, and don't forget to use my promo code, Dr. BeeWell. See you guys there. Giddy up. Are you able, sorry, are you able to see people, who have, like you've obviously seen very successful stories within recovery, but then have you had any challenging stories where people, they're is because I do think that it's so beneficial, but maybe there could be things that might be triggering and, it's not the best path for everybody. Have you seen any of that or?
Yeah, definitely. I think that like all things, I mean, first of all, just to say, I think that recovery really only happens for people when they're really ready. And there's nothing that can make you ready. You can fight medicine. Like medicine is not a magic pill. It's not a magic bullet. It's not going to do all of the work for you. And I think that's the common misconception. And that's what I see is when people are going to medicine because they want to avoid doing the work and they think that that'll somehow be easier. And it's not. There's no way to avoid doing the work. You have to do it.
Only way is through.
The only way is through. And so those are the people that I see that struggle, the people that are coming to the medicine because they expect it to do all the healing for them instead of, going to the medicine with an open heart, open mind, ready to do the work and ready to receive whatever it may be, that's needed. And I also think cannabis in particular, from what I've seen, because the medicines are good for different things. There's like Amanita muscaria, has been shown to really, really help people with benzo withdrawal and also alcohol.
Cool.
Alcohol
that would make
addiction.
a ton of sense. Benzos and alcohol. Yeah. Same receptors.
Yep. So, and then, I've seen a lot of success with iboga as well, ibogaine for opiate addicts.
Big time.
But not for everyone. I mean, my best friend, I held space for her. Well, iboga isn't my medicine, but was there with her during ceremony, and it didn't work for her, and she's sober now. But it still doesn't mean that it works for everyone.
You've got to be ready, man.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be ready to receive it and you have to be ready to do the work because it's funny. I want to ask you, this is a question I brought up earlier with another guest, but recovery, like me, I was the same as you, but I sit here today and I actually don't look at myself as somebody, I wouldn't identify as somebody who's in recovery. I feel like I'm recovered. I know that, that this thing exists and that it's something that I need to understand and need to be aware of, that it did happen to me and that if I go down certain paths and don't do, then that can come back up in my life. I'm aware of that. I don't need to say that I'm recovered. I don't need to say that I'm in recovery every single day to do that. I'm so healed from that portion of it. That was just I figured out exactly why the root causes of why I was doing those things, why I was harming myself with them, why I found comfort in it. I figured it all out, and I figured out how to remove that. So when I talk about it, I don't even, like I said, I don't identify that way anymore because I don't need to, and I don't think that it's helpful for me. Maybe it is helpful for some people, but I'm curious what where you land at it, especially somebody who came more so from the halls of AA than I did.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that I hated the most about AA was that every single time I had to say, "Hi, I'm Keelia, I'm an alcoholic and addict." First of all, I never really felt like I was an alcoholic. That didn't feel true for me, but I felt like because I went to AA, which I went to AA over NA just because there was more meetings around in a more robust community where I lived. So, but opiates and meth were my drugs of choice. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I just hated that I had to say that every single day, like, or every single time I went to a meeting, I had to say, "Hi, I'm Keely, I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict," because that's just identifying with something that I also didn't connect with, even after, a year or so sober, I was like, I actually don't like saying I'm an addict all the time. Like, I don't like saying that and repeating it, and our words have so much power, and I understood that then. And so for me, I also feel like it's the irony of like I deeply at the time that I decided I wanted to start plant allied recovery, I was so far from removed from even thinking about myself as a person in recovery. Like I was just a person. I was just like I had already like it was just I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's right. I was a homeless addict. I totally forgot." Like that was where I was at pretty much. I'm like, I'm here working at different retreat centers like in a totally different like universe to where I was before. And so I think that yeah, kind of the irony of me starting this community is that yeah, like I don't identify so much as a person in recovery anymore either. I also agree. I feel like I have recovered from the big book says like that they use that language. They say they have recovered from a hopeless state of mind, body, and spirit. And I feel that I have. And that being said, I know that I have to continuously do that work and all of that. But I just feel like where I am today, like to do anything to harm myself or my path, because I'm so rooted in my purpose and my mission now that if I did anything to take away from that, it just wouldn't make sense. Like it doesn't make sense for me anymore. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people within plant allied recovery, the community, first of all, many of them are just in recovery from trauma and don't identify as being in recovery from addiction. Or, there are other things. There are people who are food, addicted to food. And when you look at the definition of recovery, it just means to return to a whole state of mind, body, and spirit. It's like to return ourselves back to health again, to full health again. And so you can define that in whatever way you want to. You can say you're a person in recovery. You don't have to say it like whatever. Like we're multidimensional beings. We have so much more than these labels that we, self prescribe ourselves. So, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and I liked your response. I think it was a good one. It's just funny. I just go back and forth, because it's like you was the dogma of it. You had to identify to the point where I love the guys that I did NA with because at one point I felt that way, and I didn't say a word. I just would stop doing it, and I just identified as, "Hey, I'm Steve. Giddy up." And it was like that was good. I don't even know if I was saying giddy up at that time, but I was just like, "Hey, I'm Steve." Like, I'm not gonna do that because like it's like that makes me feel. I know what the case is. I know what happened in my life. I know that I did these drugs to hide or to get away from to feel comfortable in my body. To there's some other root cause, and so I need to figure out what that root cause is. And so it was just it's just funny. And I not to say that I don't have if it's working for you to say that and it's working, that's the language that you want to work. That's a giddy up. I do hope that it's like less, the stigma keeps getting less and less, which I think that it is like as much as people hate what's going on at like in the bigger government and like the federal government with Bobby Kennedy and stuff. Well, guess what? Bobby
Hmm.
Kennedy was a heroin addict. And
Right.
now he's one of the top secretaries in the country. So regardless of whatever you feel about him and like what he's doing and all that, he was a heroin addict, and now he's a person who's is bringing, and some people would make fun of that. Some people would say, "Oh, that's probably why he's crazy," whatever. But like, it's just showing that regardless of that, the stigma is becoming less.
Totally. Yeah. And I think, as also addiction has affected more and more populations, like we've seen the stigma change. And I think now the stigma that I see my community face is around being in recovery and working with plants. Like that is a much bigger stigma than just being a person in recovery. Like nobody really cares at this point. They're like, oh, cool. I know 12 other like everyone knows someone in recovery. Like, you know, it's just addiction, or they know someone who's actively addicted. It just affects so many people.
Yep.
But I think, yeah, now the bigger stigma is like, I'm a person in recovery and I consciously work with mind altering substances that are from the earth, you know? But, you know, that's the conscious choice that
Do they have to be from the earth?
I don't,
When I asked that, because like obviously LSD, right? And we talked about Bill
right.
and yeah, and to be honest, like, you know, mushrooms have been great. LSD has been great. Both of
Yeah.
them have been beautiful medicines to help me work and to help me get to the place that I'm at today.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, I found LSD as a teenager, and it was super helpful for me then. I didn't really go into that part of my story because it was just a little blip. But you know, in my partner who was suicidal, like that was one of the ways he was self-medicating, was we were taking LSD together and trying to get to the root cause of why he didn't want to be here. And super healing, super profound. Obviously, you know, didn't stick for him, but stuck for me, like some of those transformation. So I think that these medicines, these other medicines that are not from plants, have a place and are helpful. I do sort of look at it. So plant-led recovery, there's no dogma. There's no, this is the way and this is the wrong way. This is, you know, any way that is helping you heal and that is actually bettering your life is the way for you. And so no one claims to know the way for anyone else. And some people are working with ketamine and other, you know, psychedelics that are non-plants. What I do,
MDMA,
MDMA,
you know.
exactly. What I do say is that approaching this with the allyship of a plant spirit, I think is helpful. What my teachers have taught me is that as powerful as these medicines are, like MDMA and LSD, they can open you up spiritually without that protective presence of a plant spirit. And so even if you're working with cacao or you're drinking a tea and asking that tea to sort of protect you and guide your journey, you know, in some way, working with a plant or fungi or earth spirit, you can work with Mother Earth herself. You don't, you know, if you're working with LSD, then maybe like praying to Mother Earth. But that's the one, I guess, that's the big difference, is that those types of medicines don't have an inherent sentient spirit in the same way that medicines like ayahuasca and the mushrooms and, you know, even cannabis has that sort of sentient guiding spirit. And that helps to protect you, you know. And so yeah, that's what I teach, is really just for people to make sure that they're still calling on good protection somehow. If they choose to work with those medicines too, we don't have a
Protection of the giddy up. We all know how important strength training is for long-term health, but it can be hard to know where to start. I was in the same spot a year ago. You want to make sure you're doing exercises right, avoiding injury, and getting results, but it's easy to feel lost without a plan. That's when I found On Target Fitness. At On Target, you get a custom strength program, personalized attention in a small group setting, and the nutrition coaching you need for real lasting change. In the year I've been working out there, I've gotten stronger, more mobile, and more confident. My form has improved, and even something as simple as walking feels better. The group energy keeps me motivated, and every workout is fun. On Target just opened a new location in Kingston. Now you've got even more options to experience their amazing approach. If you're ready for lasting change, head to www.ontargetfit.com and schedule your session today.
yeah.
Yeah, bring it on. Yeah, exactly. Bring it on. Protection of the giddy up, baby.
Yeah.
You know, protect me and bring me. And I just don't. It's just a new world. You know, it's a new world that we're getting into in terms of how these can be used. And I think it's you're grounded in that you are somebody, for whatever reason you want to go deep into it, and you're going. You're going and spending your, you just spent the last winter in Peru and got to learn. So I can't even imagine what you learned. And like, I'm sure that you're planning to do that again and to create this process for yourself. So like that's huge. And we need people like you who are not necessarily just focused on the capitalistic gain of it, and that I can create a business around this and it can make me money. And it's like, no, I actually want to learn this ancient knowledge that has been passed down. And I'm actually going to take this knowledge and I'm going to bring it to my people. I'm going to bring it to my people from another culture. I think that that's so wonderful. I do think that people, get caught up in some of that stuff where they, that people yell and they want you just to get angry and they, you need to respect the culture of the Met. And I agree. I agree with you. But I also think that it's okay if people are experimenting and trying to figure out how to work to become their own, don't say that you're a shaman and don't say that you're a guru or anything like that. Don't market yourself that way and don't put it out in the world. But if you want to try to become that and learn and go in, because we have everything within inside of us, the information that that those elders have, it exists in the universe and we have access to it. And at some point, somebody, might take a journey for themselves and learn, and get that information downloaded to never even having a conversation with the person who actually, was taught that information. And so that way of energy exchanging in that way and knowledge exchanging in that way, you know, I, I think can happen. And so I'm just grateful that you're going into the jungle and like doing that. And that's what a cool thing to say. Like when you say that, I'm just like, it's so cool. Like when I just got back from the jungle, it's like, man, I can't wait to go to the jungle with Keelia. Like I know that I'm going to do it at some point, but it sounds so good.
Yeah, it's pretty hardcore over there for sure.
Oh, I love hardcore though.
Yeah.
I love give me the experience, give me the essential experience of as hardcore as you can get, as authentic as you can get. So like tell me about that a little bit. Tell me about how you like ended up like with, seeking these elders out, seeking these teachers out, them, receiving that you can be a part of whatever they're doing. Is it just like a financial exchange? I would guess not, but how does that work?
Yeah, so the space that we just were was actually in Putumayo, in Colombia. Actually, technically, we were in Ecuador. We were like on the other side, like we were on the other side of the river, and we could see Colombia on that side, and we were technically in Ecuador. But so that's where I was just a few weeks ago, and it was
So
with
you were in
this.
Ecuador.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I actually didn't know until I was there that I was in Ecuador because we flew into Colombia and we're like, oh, we're going to be in Putumayo, Colombia. But then down the river, we found out a few days later that we had been in Ecuador the whole time. So,
Cool.
anyways, it's like kind of like funny. Yeah, so it's this Siona people, and it's a Colombian tribe. This was definitely very authentic of an experience, which I loved so much. I got connected to them through my teacher, who I'm bringing here. So actually, this retreat that we're holding is going to be him bringing that medicine from that tribe here,
Cool.
which will be the first time that it's been.
I thought you were in Peru. Why was I saying Peru so much?
I was in Peru, yeah, for most of the winter.
Okay,
then,
okay, yeah. Okay, good.
Then I went to the jungle in Colombia. So
yeah, because you came back and then you left again.
yes,
Yes, okay, that is right. Because I saw you. Yeah, okay, giddy up. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I know. It's been a little bit of a crazy winter. It, really, really beautiful. To summarize the experience, I think that this was like the second or third time they had ever had people onto their, like outsiders onto their land. They did such an incredible job. I love visiting indigenous villages and really like witnessing their culture, and everywhere that I've been, it's been so powerful. They've been so inviting and just like gracious and always wanting to feed us really well and just take care of us. It's been really, really beautiful and such an honor, especially just such an honor. For all the reasons. But yeah, it was really powerful. It was my teacher's teacher, so it was cool to meet that person. And their lineage is strictly Yahe. So as in a lot of lineages, there are other plant allies that can support you, like Yahe. So with Yahe, like Hape or Rape, you've probably heard of and familiar with. And that can really help you in grounding in the moment. I personally, work with a lot of essential oils during ceremony to help myself feel grounded. And I have some really special ones that I've gotten from other indigenous elders, in my travels that are really special to me that I work with during ceremony. But this Taita said, no sense. No, like only Yahe. Like you can't work with any essential oils, no Hape, no, just Yahe all night. And we were in hammocks. We journeyed in hammocks, which was also its own like challenge. I had never done that before, where you're not grounded. You're like on a hammock in the air. And so it's like very wild. experience. There's no bathrooms, so there's that element too. Um, but
No
yeah,
bathrooms at all.
no bathrooms. Nope.
Wow, love
Yeah.
it. Love it.
So, uh,
Sounds like the studio.
yeah. um, so yeah, I mean, it was incredibly powerful, really cool to just sit with the medicine and really like, you know, and just so much learning and just not going to the tools that help me feel safe and just like showing up that way. I made a post about it, but I felt like it was what I felt like going on this trip to the jungle was showing up naked at the altar, like just me. I had none of my tools that I normally went to for anything. Like I even felt underprepared in like the things I was wearing too, because I was expecting the jungle to be like similar to where I'd gone before, but it was very different in environment. And so, yeah, it was just, I just felt so like naked at the altar, and it was beautiful and exactly what I needed. But yeah.
Yeah, I like nudity is funny and being naked is funny. It's like that, it's something that's so repressed and so we're so ashamed of and so scared, and that's like kind of like nervousness about it, and it's like I like to take my clothes off and be free and go in nature, and like I find public places where I can do that safely and legally. And it's like at first when I did it, like, I would venture that maybe, like I at first when I first did it, I didn't like have my, I didn't look like this, I was like 80 pounds heavier probably, and just didn't feel as good about my body. Was just learning how to like move and how to, but I knew I needed to do this. I knew, and especially men, we we have this thing called a penis, and like it creates this it creates this thing with other men that like it's this important thing, and that it matters, the size of it, the look of it, and it's like none of it matters, none of that matters. It's just we all have we all have our body, and it's our body. And so like being able to free myself into that and being like, hey, this is fine and this is normal and this is it was a super but I felt very unprepared. Like you said, being naked at the altar, being unprepared
Yeah.
for that, and being like, oh man, this okay, but you've got it. The only way is through. So do hard
Yeah.
things and grow, and like sorry for TMI if that's what it was. Okay, cool.
No.
But no, it's just so that makes me like, and two is so how long were you there? How long were you in Ecuador?
A little less than 2 weeks. That was just a short little trip.
And how many times did you sit with medicine while you were there?
So we sat with Yahe 4 times,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was another medicine that was new. That was what they called. My teacher was describing it as like basically a cold brew ayahuasca. I don't know. It's called Yoko, and it's a daytime medicine that they would use if they needed to hike for a very very long hike through the jungle to meet with another tribe. It would give them energy and help them to navigate in the jungle. It's the same ingredients as ayahuasca or yahe, just not some, I think, cold brewed somehow, like prepared without heat. Um, and so we worked with that one day as well, which was a new experience and pretty subtle, still beautiful. But yeah, that was what we did.
That's wonderful. Now, were you like I just am curious about the energy exchange. Like, how did you get? I know your teacher brought you to this tribe, but like, is this a retreat center or it's no? Like, this is like,
No,
yeah. You said
it's
you were the
their
first two.
village.
Yeah, you were two people. You were the first person who'd ever, or second outsider who'd ever been there or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. I
Second
think
or
the
third.
third. I think we were the third. I think we were the third group that had come, and outside of that, like for a ceremony in this way.
So
So
there's no
yeah,
language.
yeah,
There's language barriers, yeah.
yeah. My teacher speaks the language though, so
Okay,
yeah,
and obviously speaks your languages,
yeah,
speaks
yeah, yeah,
English.
yeah.
Okay, and so you kind of just got brought into that, like, and you just gonna bring them. That's what I would assume, right? Like you're gonna bring them some gifts and bring them some giddy up and take care of them somehow.
Yeah, no, and there was financial exchange. I mean, the year before, my teacher had brought someone that ended up bringing in like a system for a well, so there was like running water.
Ooh.
And so the idea is that we are helping them, build the ability to be able to do this, to be able to, continue. And so that's the reciprocity. And there was an exchange with my teacher. Um, and then I also brought gifts. I always bring, whenever I go to the jungle, I always bring gifts for the kids. I've found just like so much joy in that. So this time I brought light up fidget spinners, like 20 light up fidget spinners, like the ones that like
Yes.
spin, and gave those to the kids, and they were a total hit. Um, but yeah, I think gift giving is really important, for the reciprocity of going. But yeah, I mean, I'm still so I feel also like I'm a baby in this too. Like I'm still new to even travel, like learning in this way. It's just been the last couple of years that my world has expanded in this way, and that I've had the opportunity through the work that I do to get to travel and learn all over. And so I still feel kind of like a baby on it, but it was really cool to get to witness. And that woman who I sat next to in my very first ayahuasca ceremony also went to the jungle, and it was our very first time journeying together since our first time sitting back in 2020. So it was like really cool full circle moment.
Did you like, was that by happenstance, or did you make that connection? Like, did you?
I'm
Yeah, right. You were the one. Yeah, cool.
yeah, the
Okay,
medicine community is small in general. Like
right.
someone always knows someone everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny because it's like I'm tapped into it somewhat, but
Mhm.
I'm very much on like the periphery.
Mhm.
It's funny once I go deeper, it will present itself, and
Totally.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited about it. Now, when you were in Peru though, you were there for longer than 2 weeks.
Yeah, we were there from November 11th through, oh, when did we get back? Through the day before. We got back the day
Equinox,
before the equinox.
yeah,
Yeah.
which was like March
Yep.
7th,
Yep.
something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was in the Sacred Valley, not in the jungle there. We were still working with medicine. There were some great teachers, but different lineages, more of the high Andes people, and a lot more Wachuma is present there, although we did work with ayahuasca as well. But mostly I was just there to look at the community that's been built in the Sacred Valley and learn about community building and connect with some people there for learning how to better build a community myself. So it was more like a working trip.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
working. I mean, yeah, of course, right? And you had online access, yeah, so you could
Yep.
still connect with your community and do that. And yeah, I think that's like I said, there's different ways to do it. And if you're going away for 4 months, you still gotta work and still gotta put forward that, and you want to, you want to progress, you want to have that, but still give yourself the space. Now it sounds really wonderful. Now, this is just a selfish question because I'm always thinking about it. Like, are you gonna have children? Are you thinking about having children ever?
I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah. I think you know, I've always known I'd be an amazing mom. I have a brother with special needs,
Mm.
who is I'm kind of like a second mom too. He's 2 years younger than me, but cognitively like 4 years old. And still like a huge part of my life. And so I feel like I sort of have that with him where when my parents pass on, he'll be my responsibility as well. And I'm, going to be his guardian. And so I know that I have him. And in terms of having kids, EJ and I have said that if we were going to have kids, we'd need to make sure that we were living in tribe, like living like in community with other people who are also having kids, so that our kids could grow up together and sort of be like outside of society a little bit, and not be influenced in the same way. Um, so that would have to be in place before, because I don't believe in the nuclear family. I think that it's too much for two people to be expected, and then something happens and it's one person being expected to raise other beings on their own. I think that it really takes a village, and that's what's best for us as humans, is to have the support of a village. And so yeah, I don't have that village support like local to me yet. My friends are kind of all over the place. Like Maine is very spread out. Everyone's like an hour away.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I'm building that first before I decide.
Well, that's wonderful, and I think you should go on your own path, and that what feels good to you and what you feel called to. I was I also thought that I needed to have everything perfect, or everything set up first, and then I had my wife got pregnant, by accident, whatever. And it's a giddy up.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and everyone said the same thing to me too. Like, you'll be the best dad. You'll be a great dad. And I find reasons to take care of people, right? Like I take care of a guy with intellectual disabilities over in Portsmouth. He's part of my
Mhm.
family. He just guy was riding his bike all over Portsmouth. People taking advantage of him. I was like, I need to help this guy. Now he comes to Easter and Christmas, and he's a part of Uncle Al. And so I think that but whatever you feel called to, it's they're what whatever you feel called to is gonna be good for you. But yes, if you think you're gonna be a great mom, you will be a great mom, and fucking do it. And let's build a community. And it is kind of like new age, right? Like it's different. My wife is not. Still a pharmacist. A traditional pharmacist, and loves being a traditional pharmacist. And she does great work. She works in the NICU at a hospital, which is great. And I don't always love everything that's going on there, but I do love a lot of it, and I think that it's good. Um, but I don't think I could tell her like, hey, we're gonna move to Ecuador and we're gonna do it this way. It's more like a mix. It's like, yeah, we could do some of this stuff, and so it was actually really cool. Like, you mentioned DJ, who's your partner, and him and I, we got to got to do this awesome sauna, and with a men's group type of deal. And the first time I actually got to go in that sauna, I got to bring my son. And
Mm.
we got to do it, and it's great. It's crazy to think. Some people would be like, oh, that's wild. So my wife lets me do that stuff, and she lets me introduce him to that. And so we're trying to find that balance of
Totally.
what our community looks like, what an American, what we're at now, where we really are all spread out. We are, no one stays in their home. Not many people stay in their hometown anymore. Um, you do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
girl.
I'm from Portland, and I'm in Portland. So
It's
yeah.
so good.
I love it. I mean, yeah. It's
Oh, hell
magical.
yeah. Hell yeah, man. I mean, if I was in Portland, I might stay in Portland too,
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's just we're spread out. We're spread out,
Yeah.
and where you gotta take time. Like this weekend, I'm gonna go see my brother. He lives 2.5 hours away, so that's like a plan. That's a trip. But you gotta do it. You gotta figure it out. It would be better if we are all just like living together, and maybe it's like I go back and forth because it is. Maybe. It probably would be better and probably be better for our humanity, but times are changing, and we gotta figure out how to change with the times, because we can't put the technology and the can of worms back in the can. It's not it's already out.
Mhm.
So figuring how to integrate into
Mhm.
that, right? And that's the thing that I think is the huge message is like with integration, it really is just like with anything, with any type of integration, it just takes time and understanding of like where you're at. And so like and time is the biggest thing. And so sometimes we try to like integrate stuff too fast. And so for the people who you said that they just wanted to come in and take the medicine and then feel better and heal from their alcoholism or their addiction, like that's not how it works. You have to integrate this in. You have to integrate that experience. You have to take the medicine, have these feelings that switch your perception, and then when you're no longer on the medicine, you need to hold on to those feelings, and you need to practice them, and you need to understand how they felt in your body. That was how I knew from my pharmacy background, was that the I'd taken mushrooms, right, and had experienced maybe microdose for a day or two, or just had my ceremony by myself. And then I know the half life of the drug. I know when it's out of my system. I know there's no longer any metabolites in there, and so we're talking that's in like 2 days, And so, but on day 8, I still feel the same benefit that I felt while I was under that. That is the power right there. And
Mhm.
I thought to myself, I said, "Whoa, like we don't need to take drug every day. We don't need to." I knew that was the case, but I didn't know there was something that we could work with, and that's why it's hidden. That's why there's bad stuff out there about it too, because tell a pharmaceutical company or anybody who's looking to make profit that you say, "Hey, this is something that you can engage with, and it's going to help you heal," and then you don't need to engage with it all the time. You don't need to engage with it every day.
Yeah, actually, there's a quote from this. I think the CEO of Pfizer. It might be another. I think it's Pfizer. But don't quote me on that. But just talking about when the Iboga and Ibogaine research was coming out, they're like, well, how do we profit off of that if it's a one-time cure? Like he literally said, he's like, we can't do anything with this. If it cures addiction, how do we profit? And it's like that is that is how it works right now, right? It's like profit over people. And so, um, yeah, orienting ourselves back to like putting the people first is a whole journey that I think that we are, especially those of us who are walking, and I like to think of it as the middle path, like everything that you just spoke to, like even me being like, yeah, I want there to be a community so that my kids can be in the community. It's not so that they can be sheltered and be in the community and never see society. Like I think that there's a middle path, and that's often the way. In my own spiritual self-discovery, it's like the middle path is often the way of like, we don't have to be so extreme over everything. We just have to find that good middle path that works for us. And yeah, and there are so many things that we've talked about within this podcast already that are like so nuanced, like, pricing and capitalism meets plant medicine world and all of these things. And I think the solution for a lot of that does lie in that sort of middle path.
Yeah, I think that's very well articulated because that's the path that I'm walking, and I'm trying to figure out the financial energy exchange and how that works, and how how much can I, because like one what I love to do, and I prefer to do it sometimes, is I love to barter. I love to have that type of energy exchange, like, but it doesn't always work out because you might not be looking for what I have, and I might not be looking for what you have, but we want, or you might be looking for what I have. I'm not looking for what you have
Hmm.
necessarily. So like there is a ton of benefit to it, but it is, fucked up, and, and nefarious at some, money, but it's good too. It's good, and it can be helpful. And so I struggle with that, and I'm always trying to like learn and it just keeps me going back the middle path. I'm just my own guy, and I'm creating my own system that I'm gonna, that I'm gonna live in. And I honestly think that in the future there'll be more of it. I think that there'll be more bartering and more, different types of exchange with different types of currency, and not just like dollar fiat currency. And I think that's coming.
Totally. Yeah. My first iteration of my business and integration coaching, I used to offer trade, like, oh, you have organic veggies growing in your garden? Great. Like you can pay me in vegetables because I'd just buy them anyways at Whole Foods, and I'd rather not give my money to Whole Foods. I'd rather like, like do it this way.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that that's beautiful, and I think that we're all still just trying to figure it out. And I think that it's really beautiful that our generation is even at this place now where we're considering these challenging questions and like all of this, like, what do we do now? Like I think it's really good that we're here, and it's all a part of the path for us. And yeah, lots of good things there.
Yeah, I'm excited about the kids, and
Hmm.
about the kids that are, like you said, about what we're gonna create. And maybe they'll just be pissed at us like I'm pissed at the boomers. It's
Yeah.
usually how it goes. But I think that maybe there might be a little bit, maybe a little bit of difference in this one. It's like, just from my own personal standpoint, it's just like, and this is, I feel bad for the millennial dads, and the boomer dads. But millennial dads get to spend, like, I think it's 3 times as much time with their kids as, as boomer dads did. And that's not because they were bad guys. It's just what they thought they were supposed to be doing. They
Right.
didn't think they could do that. Um, my dad talks about it. He was like a big tough guy, and he was, he wouldn't even push a stroller. He wouldn't even push a stroller. But now it's like he'll wear the Bajorn, he'll push this with with all his
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
grandkids and stuff. And he's like, I can't believe I wasn't doing this beforehand. I was robbing myself, and he just didn't know. And so
Hmm.
it's pretty cool to see the elders come to that, to that point, and to learn from them, and to say, okay, well, giddy up, spend time with your son, kid.
Totally.
That's what the lesson is here. But about the kids, when you go to, to tribes, into places where you're in that community, when like are is there a separation between how, like, the kids and the medicine, and how the kids do the medicine?
It depends. I mean, it definitely depends on the tradition. It depends on the practice. But yeah, the places that I've been, the kids do partake. It's not, forced upon them. It's a consensual, thing. Oftentimes, just a small amount too. But yeah, kids are. I mean, kids are working with it, and
Like what,
those.
like a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old? Like when does it start?
It can start really young. I mean, I think in womb is when it really technically starts in a lot of traditions. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
It affects the, yeah. I've never looked into that medicine, whether they're like the tetragen, they in pregnancy, what happens there.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, I don't have an opinion on this like at all. I'm just sharing what I've witnessed and seen and what
Yeah,
I
and to be
know.
clear, I likely don't have an opinion on it either. I'm just curious. Like I said, these people who have been doing it for millennia, let's find
Right.
out what they've been doing and see how it's been working for them. I'm here to learn.
Yeah. So those people who have been doing it for that long, yeah, it starts in utero, and then throughout their life. I think that in the Hunikuan in the Hunikuan village I went to in Brazil, I had asked some questions about the kids, like, do they like to drink the medicine? And a lot of them, would as a little kid and then would go through their own sort of like preteen teenage rebellion where they wouldn't want to partake. Um, but by the time that they're 13, they're usually back to it. And what, like, these kids knew exactly at 12, like 11, 12, 13, 14, knew exactly who they were, knew exactly who they wanted to be, were like embodied strong, like, caring. They were all helping raising the other children. They were all wanting to be good role models. They were like, they grew up in tribe and they are there to be a part of the tribe and a contributing member, and everyone has a role in the tribe. And so it was really beautiful to witness and really inspiring for me, because that's what I feel like, I can only hope to have something like a smidgen as amazing as what it would be like to actually grow up in tribe. But like, that's what I want to create for my kids, is a feeling of community beyond just mom and dad, like a feeling of family outside of that. But yeah, they're totally know who they are, sure of themselves, beautiful, beautiful humans. And a lot of them are also having children really young too. I
Mm.
mean, they're like, in tribe, they're like 16 having kids or younger sometimes, with other young
Makes sense.
kids. Like, to me,
Is
they're
it
kids,
is it
but
is it
they're
young people? Is it appropriate that way, where it's young kids having the kids together? It's not like older men seeking these 14-year-old.
no, no, no. It's
Because in
pretty.
our culture, that's unacceptable. I don't know if
Right.
that's unacceptable in other cultures.
Right. I'm not sure. I mean, I didn't see any of that. The pairings that I saw, I mean, and they seemed so much older. Like, it was really wild. There was a girl there that I remember just being like so drawn to her because she seemed so wise beyond her years. And I saw her, she had a little 2-year-old, and then it was her like 17th birthday, and we celebrated that. And I was like, 17, like, what? Like, this woman carried herself like a woman, and that's probably a lot to do too with like having been brought up in the spiritual. I mean, I feel like I've aged a million years in the 5 years that I've been on the like deeply like on a service oriented medicine path, these past 5 years plus. I feel like I've aged so much, like lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes of wisdom. And so it makes so much sense that, people who were raised in this way would be able to do, yeah, would be able to carry that in that way. But yeah, I mean, and then they're also really passionate about bringing this medicine to the world. It's really funny because, in the West, like, we would never think of like filming a ceremony. Like, that sounds like a horrible thing to do and so against the rules. And then you show up in the jungle and, they were like live streaming ceremony because they want to share their culture with the world,
Yep.
and
Yeah, and
like,
I'm not the guy from the West, because I want to record the ceremonies. I want to, I want to see. I get nervous about it because of AI and what can happen there in terms of like manipulation long term, and just having this
hmm
stuff all recorded, maybe. But let's show people. Let's show people how safe it is.
yeah.
Let's show people how safe it is and what type of work can be done. Like that is funny though. It's funny that they were the ones who were pushing that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And yeah, it's just, I mean, it's beautiful. They are super excited. And the Hunikuan people specifically, they weren't allowed to speak their language or practice their culture for many years and almost lost their culture completely. There's like a handful of people, with only one of them still being alive, who pretty much saved, is like the lead elder that pretty much saved their culture, who's still living. His name's Page Kupi. And he was like one of the people who helped save their culture. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing because they literally weren't allowed to speak their language or to practice any of their ancestral ways because of colonization. And so it's so beautiful now that they get to share with, us who are bringing money and reciprocity into their land. And, hopefully people just continue to show up with a respect of that, of like knowing that history and like, honoring that. But yeah, they just show up with open arms to us and are here to share their medicines and share. So yeah, it's really beautiful.
I can't wait to go.
Yeah, it'll come with me next year. Yeah.
I can't wait to go.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to, to consider like that in the future, right? Like I have a son, wife, second baby, giddy up. And if that path presents itself, like I don't think I'm going to try it at 5 or 6, but a 13-year-old man, young man, I don't know, I gotta study on it and I gotta learn more about it. But these are, I don't know. I don't know what the path is, but it sounds like those kids are doing great down there and they're living their life, and that, so it could be.
At a Maine Fungi Fest a few years ago, I went to the parenting and psychedelics talk just to learn a little bit. I'm not a parent, so I'm not an expert on this. I am a dog mom, but that doesn't count.
It counts. It counts. It absolutely counts.
But one of the things that it was Dr. Sulak actually who was leading it.
Love Dustin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he said that incorporating ceremony and it doesn't have to be psychedelic ceremony, right? But incorporating ceremony into, kids' lives at different like big points, like when a woman, if you have when a girl like begins her bleed, to like celebrate that passagehood to womanhood for her, and have that be something that's honored and sacred and, whatever. Just bringing that in and giving, I think, children the choice and educating them on, what safe use of these medicines can look like, so that they know the difference between like abusing and working with these medicines, I think is really important to share. So yeah, I honor you on that.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, giddy up. And for, a good plug there, guys, go and check out the Maine Fungi Fest. What a beautiful event. I've been to all of them. I'll be there at the end of this month. This podcast might air right around then, so that will be good. But yeah, just come, they just do a great job of, of educating and bringing different workshops and good people together that are in this space that, I went and I present as a pharmacist and people, at first, and people see, just to see the vibes, and there's so many doctors and MDs and so many people there that are just awesome, like Dustin, like, Selma, all these great people from the, the Good Medicine Collective, and just a bunch of great folks, and it keeps growing. So guys, check out the Maine Fungi Fest. Go check Keelia. She's going to be talking, she's going to be doing a workshop. So go check her out.
Yeah, it'll be my 3rd year as well. Well, yeah, my 3rd year, and just really excited to.
This is the 4th year. It's the 4th year of it, right? Yeah. So
I didn't go to the first one. I knew about it, but yeah. It
was awesome.
Expo.
It was an Expo Center. Yeah, Portland Expo Center, baby.
Yeah.
It was so good. It was so good. It was just like all the bunch of like holistic health practitioners and just, a couple of fungus guys and it was just like, yep, this is the future right here, baby. Giddy up.
It's changed locations every year too. So.
Yeah, probably to accommodate more people.
Yeah, definitely.
That's that. It's just so good. This year is going to be fun. What's the university where is it at?
St. Joseph's.
St. Joseph. I was going to say St. John's. That's in New York. St. Joseph's, yeah. And Wyndham, right?
I think so.
Wyndham, I don't know. It's by the Sebago Lake, it's over that way, I think.
I don't think it's in Wyndham. I think it's somewhere else, but yeah.
Shit, okay. Yeah, sorry.
I don't remember either.
I'll see you guys there at the end of the month. I'll be there.
I'll be there too, and I don't know where. I grew up in Maine. I have no excuse. I just don't remember what town.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, that's great that you're going to be talking there and that you're going to be able to be providing support for people there and doing that, letting them know about people who, because I'm sure that there's some people who, might find out that this is the first fungi fest that they're going to, and it's because that they've seen somewhere that maybe, psychedelic mushrooms can help them with their, their anxiety and their trauma and their addiction. And they are seeking it out for the first time, and that absolutely, likely will be the case. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I love seeing people in person. Please come up to me, say hi if you see me there. Yeah, it's so wonderful to connect and to be around people who are also seeking healing. I mean, everyone that goes there is seeking that, so it's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It is beautiful. This has been a beautiful conversation. You are a beautiful human being, inside and out. And I just thank you so much, for coming on the show today. Where can people find you if they want to, have your services and talk to you and reach out?
Yeah, totally. So the best way is to visit plantalliedrecovery.com. You can also reach out to me on Instagram. My Instagram is keelia.ryan. And also you can email me as well. There are lots of different ways. And I can give you all those links to put in the show notes. Yeah, and reach out to me if you are interested in joining the free community. It's totally free. You get a course, you get support and weekly peer support as well. And yeah, we'd be honored to have you. And whatever level of experience you're at, newcomer, not new, old timer, whatever it is, new to recovery, new to psychedelics, new to whatever it is, just come, show up, and we'll receive you with open arms.
That sounds like a giddy up to me. And it's Keelia, Keelia, but you guys will see that in the notes as well. She is so cool, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. Guys, please subscribe, send this episode to somebody who really needs to hear it, somebody who's in recovery, somebody who's maybe trying to find recovery, somebody who's gone through trauma, somebody who needs healing. This person over here is trusted, and that they, if you want to work with somebody, please reach out to them. They obviously have the free resources as well. So thank you guys. And until next time, giddy up.